However, Matthew 24, just before the Olivet Discourse, tell us, when shall these things be? What shall be the sign of your coming and of the end of the world? And Jesus answered and said, take heed that no man deceive you, for many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ. So that's the beginning of the Olivet Discourse, right? Mark 13. Take heed lest any man deceive you, for many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ. The Olivet Discourse. Luke 21. Take heed that you be not deceived, for many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ. So, obviously, Matthew 24, Mark 13, Luke 21, all the Olivet Discourse talking about the end of the world, Jesus returning, and when these things will come to pass. These events that I mentioned in Matthew 10, delivered to councils, brought before kings for testimony against them, don't prepare speech, the Spirit speaks through you, brother betraying brother, endure to the end. Those are not in Matthew 24 during the Olivet Discourse. But they are in Mark 13. Verse 9. But take heed to yourselves, for they shall deliver you up to councils, and in the synagogues you shall be beaten, and you shall be brought before rulers and kings for my sake, for a testimony against them. The gospel must be first published among all nations. But when they shall lead you and deliver you up, take no thought beforehand what you shall speak. Neither do you premeditate, but whatsoever shall be given to you in that hour, that speak you, for it is not you that speak, but the Holy Ghost. Now brother shall betray brother to death, and the father the son. Children shall rise up against their parents, and shall cause them to be put to death. And you shall be hated of all men for my sake, but he that shall endure to the end, the same shall be saved. That is almost word for word what's in Matthew 10, supposedly not the Olivet Discourse. Luke 21, starting at verse 12. But before all these, they shall lay their hands on you and persecute you, and deliver you up to synagogues and into prisons, and being brought before kings and rulers for my sake. And it shall turn to you for a testimony. Settle it therefore in your hearts not to meditate before what you shall answer. For I will give you a mouth and wisdom, which all of your adversaries shall not be able to gainsay nor resist. And you shall be betrayed both by parents and brethren and kinsfolk and friends. And some of you shall they cause to be put to death. And you shall be hated of all men for my sake. Again, almost word for word. Slight differences here and there, but you know exactly what he's talking about. This is the Olivet Discourse. Jesus is talking about the end times. So, because we already know that Matthew takes different events of what Jesus did and different speeches that Jesus makes and combines them into one place in order to make a point, I am absolutely convinced that the section of these statements Jesus is making in Matthew chapter 10 are actually part of the Olivet Discourse later on in Matthew 24. They're not mentioned twice in Matthew. It's not Matthew 10 and Matthew 24. It's only Matthew 10, which gives all the more reason to believe Matthew just took it from one place and put it in another to prove a point. He has a purpose in Matthew, but the purpose of what I'm doing is just to put everything absolutely in order. So I am not going to put these statements here when Jesus is talking to his 12 disciples, preparing them before they go out to preach. So when I go through and combine from Matthew, Mark, and Luke, his words, I'm going to shorten it down to make it closer to what is said in Mark and Luke. It's very short in Mark and Luke, as I read. So I'm going to cut from Matthew 10, verse 17, until verse 22. And I'm just going to combine it with Matthew 24 and all the rest of these words in the Olivet Discourse. And I think it makes perfect sense to not have it repeated, since it is so clearly from the Olivet Discourse. Now, there are other portions of Matthew 10 that I might not include as well, because he goes on for a long time, and these words are just not in Mark or Luke during the same event. He's talking about the disciple is not above his master. Fear not death of the body by men, but only fear God. 2 sparrows are worth a farthing. Your hairs are numbered. Confess me before men, and I will confess you before God. Do not confess me before men, and I will not confess you before God. I come not to send peace, but a sword. There will be variance in a family. Love not your family more than you love me. You are worthy by taking up your cross. Those who lose their life will find it. Whosoever receives you receives me. If you receive a prophet, you will receive a prophet's reward. Give in my name. There's so much in Matthew 10 that's just not in Mark 6 and Luke 9 during this same event. So because there's a second event in Luke 10, when he sends out the 70, and he goes on to say a whole bunch of stuff. Whatever is in Luke 10, I'm going to move from Matthew 10 to this event, because Matthew is not in order. I already know he took a portion from the Olivet Discourse and put it in there. It would be understandable if he took other portions and put it in there, just to prove a point, to get all of what Jesus is intending to say across. So anything that is in Luke 10 when he's sending out the 70, that's repeated in Matthew, I'm going to put in Luke 10. So I will whittle down Matthew 10, this long speech that he gives, which we already know is not all here in this event, to be shorter, and only what is not repeated anywhere else in the Gospels, in these stories, will I leave.